Hey everybody, welcome to Staffing Monthly, our March issue, where we are celebrating some of the most successful women leaders in the industry and really celebrating the stories that came to light in the Together We Rise book. About a year ago, some of the most successful influencers in this industry got together and decided to share their stories. And if you are a woman in this industry that's looking to aspire, if you are a manager that has a woman on your team that you're looking to support and kind of mentor, this is an amazing book for that. You're going to hear all these different stories about incredible journeys of these women as they've navigated the career in the industry of staffing. And it's just an amazing book. So go read it. And one of the authors that contributed to the book that I really connected with, especially visually, is Janette Marx. And she is the CEO of AirSwift. She's been in this industry more years than I'm going to say on camera right now, but coming up on 9 with AirSwift, going from COO to CEO about 5 years ago and leading that organization through one of the most amazing acquisition and mergers of organizations. And I'm just blessed to have you here today, Janette. Thank you for being part of Staffing Monthly.
Absolutely. It's been my great pleasure, and I'm excited to dive right in with you.
See what you did there.
So I gotta have a little bit of fun with it. If you haven't read my chapter yet, I had too much fun with it.
we gotta go. I swear, and just this will be fun right here. But there was I don't know if you've ever heard of the staffing shark, but when I interviewed him, I had this going on. I don't know if you can actually see this. Do you see this?
I can see it.
Yeah,
I can see it. That's a good background.
I was like, I should have just teed that right up for us today, but
I should have had it in my background, and then it'd be just clear right through with all of our sharks going, which I don't mind swimming with the sharks. Let's do it.
I can tell. So that was why your story was amazing, because I've been a diver. I've hit the depths. I've done shark feedings, and they're incredible. But I really got your visual when you were comparing diving and how you can't just speak to somebody and you have to communicate a different way and you have to be very intentional about it, and how you connected that to leadership. So I want to ask you, that was my biggest question that I wanted to ask you, is how did you find your voice and learn how to be an intentional and clear communicator along your journey? How did you pick up those traits along the way?
I think that as we grow from youth all the way through, you have a lot of different series of experiences that start to shape you. And my chapter was really about my origin story. So when we were looking at it, I could tell so many stories about later on in my career, but I really focused on it's really from like age 13 to age 23. So it's a very much a certain kind of very formative time of my life where certain experiences just kind of shaped how I learned, and then I grew. And it's fun because challenges are meant to help you grow and become a better version of yourself. And so my whole chapter is around how do you overcome these different challenges, but not by quote overcoming and not by climbing a mountain, but by really sinking into it. So you're right. I have a fun analogy that I do with diving because I love to dive. And so my chapter is sink to swim, not or, it's to, and it's about embracing the sink. Because when something happens and you communicate incorrectly, somebody receives it the wrong way, you try to have a conversation, it just goes wrong and things blow up. There are so many people nowadays that just run from it, don't want to have the hard conversation, don't want to confront it. And my whole story is about embracing the sink. No matter how hard it is, you've got to embrace those feelings that just are sinking in your stomach, and you just float right on down, let the pressure of the ocean be above you, and learn how to find what I call neutral buoyancy, where you can just deal with the pressure but also find your way forward. So when it comes to communication, I think I learned early on. So I tell a story about being in 7th grade, from 6th grade to 7th grade. And this happens all the time. It happens today. It happens in different ways. It's more like, I don't know, it's more prevalent now too, because you've got social media. But I learned the power of silence. And the power of silence can be good and it can be very bad.
Yeah.
And you've got to learn how to use that in your communication. And in my situation, it was bad. I was silent when people were talking bad about other friends, and I didn't say anything. I didn't speak up. I was very non-confrontational. I didn't want to fight. I didn't want to say something that would lead to an escalation. So I was just quiet. And I think that was a point, seeing that I wrote about it, that helped me find my voice. Because what I learned when I walked into middle school on the very first day, and everybody was mad at me because they were told I agreed with what was being said, and I had to find a new set of friends because of it, I learned that my voice really mattered. And that if I didn't speak up, and if I didn't find the courage to say something when something was wrong, that the repercussions of that were even worse. And so when I look back like to early stages, and a lesson like that is so clear to me, because when you got to go to a new school and make new friends, that's hard.
Yeah.
And it doesn't feel good. So then it's like, that feels worse than speaking up. Next time I'll speak up.
I can imagine. Yeah.
Shut me up. So I'm like, okay, fine. I'll speak my mind. Let's talk. So it started early on. And then I learned how to navigate, and I found the finesse of communication as I grew, and as I had more and more difficult conversations to have, or more and more difficult messages to deliver and or receive. Goes both ways.
It does. And you shared even more into that story about some challenges that, your kind of your family faced, and having to sort of be the emotional leader, for your family, as you kind of had to navigate through divorce and kind of a broken home, which it's never easy. And it seems that wasn't even that long ago, and how little the divorce rate was back then must have been challenging. So as long as we're talking about adversity, like, what were some of the key lessons that you really embraced during that time that helped form you as a leader and a communicator today?
Back then, it was about caring. It was about putting my younger sisters first, and it was about making sure they had what they needed. And I think when there's change, you want to make sure there's a safe environment so people can speak up, people can share their feelings, people can feel like, they are heard, and that they can progress. So for me, I mean, I did so much. When I was that age in high school, I was, swimming, playing basketball, doing stuff with, drama, it was all sorts of, fun and acting and everything else. Like, I was very, very well entrenched in my school and my after school activities, but my sisters meant the world to me. And to make sure they had what they needed, and to make sure I took care of them, I felt like in the way that I could do that, in the way that we communicated, in the way that we made sure that there was safety around them and in what they did, was really important to me. And it's made us closer together as a result for, many years to come. Like, to today, I talk to my sisters all the time. I will say, upon reflection, there was a lesson on that's unintended. And that was when my father read the chapter, and he looked at me and he's like, Janette, you didn't realize we were going to get a divorce? Were you really that surprised?
Wow.
And I said, and this is at this age. So this was a year ago. We launched this on International Women's Day. So this is very, very private, but I'm going to share, because it's one that I've now looked internally at myself and gone, ooh, do I do that? And my dad said, I realize now upon reading this that I protected you all, didn't prepare you. I protected, I didn't prepare. And I found that to be so profound. And I looked at that and I'm like, you know what? You did. And then when I looked at myself, I'm like, I think I picked up that trait from you, because there's so many times in my life where I've chose to protect versus prepare. And when you protect, even though your intentions are right, it doesn't come across the right way. And the communication isn't right, because you're not being forthright with it. You're not being open. You're not being vulnerable. You're not being your true self when you're trying to protect. You're holding back, and trying to make their lives right. Yeah. That's in business. It's in personal life. It's with friends. It's like, the more open you are, the more real you are with them, the more you prepare them for what's to come, the easier you can get to the right level. And so I think that one lesson post all of this was I don't know. I think that one was really profound as leaders to think about, are we protecting or are we preparing? And are we letting them be part of the journey?
I I love that. Like that hits. Like that is amazing. And I want to explore this a little bit more because I see
Yeah.
that all the time. Like I see leaders that will protect their subordinates
Yeah.
and maybe from deficiencies or maybe overcompensate or kind of sweep some stuff under the rug, but in a method of protection for
Correct.
those people. And so do you feel that you really adopted that trait? Is that something in the last year that you've kind of had to recognize in yourself and work to maybe better manage in your management responsibilities?
Yeah, I have a couple examples, but yes, I looked at when you set big goals and whether you're achieving them or not, sometimes you want to still celebrate because there's so much to do in business. There's a lot of things to celebrate, a lot to grow, and having the hard conversations. They're called hard conversations for a reason.
Yeah.
Confronting reality and saying, "Okay, guys, we didn't quite hit this, and this is why, and let's get on, board together and deal with it together," is so much more powerful than saying, it's okay, we didn't hit it. Don't worry about it. Let's go set another goal. It's like when you unpack something together and you say, you know what, let's deal with it. Okay, we set this goal. We did not hit this for this reason, maybe that reason. Let's hear everybody. Let's unpack it together and then let's reset, regain, and like rebuild together. There is so much power in that. And so I think that I talk about confronting reality and confronting what's in front of you in that portion. And I think confronting that reality was, okay, let's deal with what's happening. Let's accept it and let's deal with it head on. And I think in business, it's the same thing. When things happen, sometimes as leaders, we do want to say, no, 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 it's okay. Well, let's just move past that. But then it's in the back of our heads and we're like, well, why didn't we get there? And why didn't we do this? And it's like, no, it's better for everybody because they're thinking
Yeah.
the same thing. So I think the more that we do that, the more that we allow people to be part of the solution. And if you're building a trusting environment, trust is critical in business. Without trust, you can't really
Got
move
nothing.
forward. Like, yeah, trust drives productivity. You get faster decision making. You get better innovation. You increase confidence of the people around you. You just get higher morale. You get because people feel they have a voice and they should have a voice. And so if you're really building a trust-based environment, it's about talking about everything, the good, the bad, the ugly, whatever's coming our way that may not be pleasant. It's sitting them down and trusting that your team is strong enough, adult enough to be able to deal with that, deal with the pressure themselves, work through their own way and confront it. So, and it's better to confront it as a team than as an individual. So there's so much more you can do.
I I love that, and I loved how you talked about unpacking it together and facing it, and just letting the reality sink in. And the reason that I like that you just shared that example that way is it really hits your methodology that you outline in the book about getting to neutral
Mm-hmm.
buoyancy. You
Yeah.
basically you have to just decompress together and just say, okay, where are we at? And then how do we approach it? And what I really liked about it is just thinking back to a dangerous dive situation. If you are in a dangerous dive situation, whether it be in a cave or a night dive or a creature or something that might be imposing some level of risk, the dive master generally isn't going to try to protect the group. They're going to communicate as clearly as they possibly can to prepare them so everyone understands exactly what they need to do to get to safety. So I love that you kind of tied that analogy in, but I want to take it in a different direction because
Sure.
of talking to a lot of the other lady leaders from the book. There's an element of self-advocacy. Like there's a lot of women out there that don't have a mentor or an advocate for them or someone that's willing to speak up on their behalf, right? So how does an aspiring woman that's in staffing say, hey, my leader might be protecting me, not preparing me? How do you have that conversation with your manager, your leader, and try to get to that level of transparency so you can be better prepared?
So I'll talk about that through my series of different reviews I've had. So, you get your performance review, and your performance review is a great time to have really in-depth conversations with your manager. And when they're protecting you, like typically when they say, I don't have any areas of improvement for you, or you do such a great job, you're fine. I'm sorry, none of us are perfect. We all have an area to
It's a
improve.
lazy manager. It's a lazy
Yeah.
manager.
Do not let your manager get away with saying that.
Right.
Do not let them off the hook. And I had a review early on in my career when I was running an office. So I just had one branch and one set at one team. And my VP told me my feedback was I don't see the bigger picture. So I was very focused on my branch and my team and what we were doing, but I wasn't opening up my eyes to the bigger picture. And
Mm.
so I thought about that. And I was like, no, like I wanted to fight it. No, I do see the bigger picture. We tend to do that. So I didn't. I was like, all right, take that in, self-awareness. Do I not see the bigger picture? Or how am I coming across that makes her think I don't see the bigger picture? So I need a change of perception. And so I worked really hard on it. I was like, okay, my peer group, these offices, volunteer time within the company for what I'm doing, how I tie that into my office. So over the next couple of years, it was a focus of mine to make sure of that. 2 years later, I have my review. In the review, one of my strengths was you see the bigger picture better than anyone. I was like, yes. And I literally did one of those things, like, yes. And she was like, why are you so excited? And I was like, do you not remember what you said to me 2 years ago?
Yeah.
And she was like, what did I say 2 years ago? This is when reviews were still on paper. And I said, I'm like, you told me I didn't see the bigger picture. And I worked so hard on that. and,
That is
and so
awesome.
it was an amazing like first start journey for me. So when I got that, as I progressed through my career and got to the point where I wasn't getting real feedback, I would say, I can take any feedback you can get. You can be as direct as possible with me. Please give me feedback because I want to consistently improve. If you don't give me feedback, I won't improve. So will you please give me something that I can improve upon? Because I've got this constant thirst for self-development and improvement, and I will work on it. I will focus on it, and I will not fight you over it. So please tell me what it is. And so it's all in how you ask as well, because a lot of managers, they don't want the confrontation either. They don't want
Right.
to say something and then see you get upset or see you not work as hard or see you sulk about it. And so communication is about not just about giving, but it's about receiving.
Yeah.
And if the person who's giving a message doesn't believe that the person on the other end is receiving it, that's when you stop. That's when intentional communication just falls apart. So it's about both ways. It's two-way communication. Sometimes it's even broader than that. But in this example, this is a two-way communication where I needed to make sure that whoever my manager was, they knew I was ready to receive. And I wanted to receive it, and I'm asking for it. And when you're asking for it in that way, as a manager, you really should give them real feedback. Whatever it is you say to your boss, whatever it is you say when you're talking about, top performers and what's great about them or not, whatever it is you say, not in front of that person, you better be saying to that person so that they can work on it and they can move it forward. And then if you are that person getting feedback, say thank you. Say thank you. Do not fight against it. Say thank you. And this is where self-awareness really comes in. You may not agree with it. It may not be right, but say thank you and then go work on yourself and work on that perception because that's real.
It's true. Perception is reality, and you do have to be self-aware enough to know this person gave me honest feedback and it's a blind spot of mine and this is something I do need to work on, or this person gave me feedback that they believe to be right, but it's not true. How do I go back and work on that perception? Exactly like you just outlined in your story. And I think that's great advice. Now, I want to switch to the bigger picture. I want to use this as a segue. So I can't even imagine what it would be like overseeing the type of merger that you did, right? You must have been, you would have had to communicate a clear vision saying, this is where we're at, this is why we're doing this, and this is where we're going. And you would have had to kind of communicate a clear vision about what that looks like and who all is involved and what their expected contributions are. So how do you cast that sort of vision, that communication for so far out in the future, yet make sure that you're living it every day, you're communicating every day to make sure that you get to where you're going. Like, how do you navigate that big picture communication?
So I'm really proud of the AirSwift merge and what we did through that time. And then during COVID, we did a merge with Competentia and took that same playbook, and it worked brilliantly. So, and we did it much quicker even as we worked through it. But the Air and the Swift merge was really fun because it was a merger of equals. It was two companies of the same size, both global, both with, their own systems, their own ways of doing things, their own different countries that they
Cultures.
were in, different cultures, so when you take two companies of the same size and bring them together, you saw intentionally we used both names in our name now. So we're AirSwift. We brought Air Energy and Swift Worldwide together, and we intentionally used both. And our message for the vision was we are bringing the best of both together. And sometimes neither company may have the best, and the best is something out there that's going to come in brand new to the company. So we were looking at how do we really create our new culture, our new set of values, our new mission as one. And at this point forward, there is no Air, there is no Swift. We are one. And so the first step of our communication was about combining together as one, because when you're competitors at first and then you combine, it's hard, especially if you're fierce competitors. So there's a lot of mergers that have happened with competitors where it gets a little rocky. And that's because they're so used to just fighting with each other versus playing along with each other and working together and looking that together. So the first was about the messaging around why we're one and the why behind the merger and the benefits for each of them. Not about the benefit for the company, but the benefit for everybody in the company and why it made more sense for them, from career progression and advancement to new areas to go to new places to take their clients, where they've been asking in a country to work with them, but they haven't been able to open there. So many benefits for the employees to be able to really seize and grow from. So communication was critical at the beginning, critical all throughout. And we did town halls. We did all colleague calls every week at the beginning with, here's what we're doing, here was our progress, here's what we've done. But we set up, we have a project management office who heads it up, and we had 11 different project teams. And it was all based on, whether it was marketing or finance or tax or, legal, and all the different areas ahead for each of those. We had an executive steerco that oversaw it all. And in each of those teams, we had people from both companies. So you wanted to make sure that you got the knowledge from both, and you could look at everything from a clear lens and take an unbiased kind of step back from it and view it. And based on all those people being part of it and it being embedded, we didn't use outside consultants as we started our integration. We had them that helped us set it all up and plan it. And then once we went live, we were set. And our teams were able to really work well together and drive all the change. They were part of the change. They were part of the decision making. They were part of the insights coming into it. And we did have a regular comms process, open Q&As, traveled around the world, saw people in person. So did quite a bit to. It's funny, I never thought you could over communicate. So in our first, you do an employee engagement survey, of course, every year, like most companies do. And back in our very first test one, it was like communication wasn't as good. So we're like, okay, we got to work on communication. I never thought I would get an employee engagement survey that says we communicate too much. And I was like, wow. So I'm going to say I would rather have that than not communicate enough, because
take the win. Just take the win.
Take the win. I was like, all right, we communicate too much. So you get your balance as you go and as change is happening in a company. And so you got to get that regular cadence right. But over communicate. You may think it's nothing to you. You may think it's not that much, but it is so important to everybody else, knowing which office they're going to, knowing who's going to be. Leadership was important. We did that within the first 2 weeks, knowing who their leaders were going to be, making sure that we could create some stability and, again, safety in what they were doing so that they could feel like they could produce. So there were so many steps that we took. We could spend hours on this.
I love that. And some other time I'd love to pick your brain on that, because that sort of stuff has just always been fascinating to me. But
Mhm.
I do want to bring it back down to the individual woman that might be, working as an account manager or a branch manager, or salesperson, somewhere in kind of a branch level producer type role, that might aspire to something greater, right? If you were going to give them one piece of advice or one piece of guidance to help them improve their communication, to help them communicate clear with their people all around them, with their teams, that will help them on their journey up the ladder, what would that advice or guidance be?
Okay, can I give more than one? Um,
As many as you want.
so I'm going to take a step back and answer this in a slightly different way at first,
Oh,
because this is a passion of mine. If anybody wants to read any of Carla Harris's books, she's fantastic at what she does, an amazing woman. But she talks about how you get deposits at work, whether it's through performance or through relationships. And we as women are really good at the performance side and not as great as you would think about relationships, because we're not going out on the golf course. We're not going out for the happy hours all the time. We're not doing a lot of the extras along it, which is where a lot of the relationships are built. So when you're thinking about communication, because when people look at promotions and they talk in a boardroom and they're like, oh yeah, she performs well, but her performance goes to this level. A guy may be at this level, but his relationships are up here. And he may get that promotion because he's got the relationships, even though his performance is slightly down, because he's been focusing and depositing in that area as well. So women really need to deposit in the relationship side and communicate authentically and be real on the relationship side and build key relationships. And you can do that during working hours too if you have a family. You've got to think about that though. The balance of performance and relationships matter. And the way you communicate and build those relationships matter if you want to grow your career, if you want to grow beyond where you're at, and how the impact you make with that is. I will also say, raise your hand and volunteer within your company, because that's how you get known. So if there is a task force, if there's something going on, you don't have to volunteer for everything, but become known, not just for the office, the branch, or the sales area that you have. Become known for the brain and the smarts and the intelligence that you bring to the greater company. And that will get you noticed as well. That drives relationships. I had my son at an early age. If you read my chapter, you know. And I did a lot of volunteer time within my company. And that's how I built my relationships. And that's how I got known. I got known through training. I got known through systems and systems integrations. I got known across the company in different ways because I raised my hand and did a bit more of volunteer time outside my normal scope, which led to some of my promotions early on. So definitely do that. And then I would say when you're communicating, I would always have the other person's point of view in mind. So if you know where they're coming from and you communicate with intent, your feelings, your voice, your tone, your body language all matter. So if you have the end in mind and where you really want to go, at least leave them with the right feeling. What's the feeling you want to convey to them? Is it sense of urgency? Is it that you're upset about something? Is it, praise? Whatever it may be, leave them with the right feeling, because they may forget what you say. And there's a lot out there about this. They may forget how you say it, but they're not going to forget. Like, know that feeling. What do you want to leave them with? And then work backwards from that. What does your body language need to be? What is it like? Are you being natural enough with that feeling in mind to be able to really convey your message in the way that you want it to be lasting? It won't be lasting if you're not thinking about the feeling that goes with it. So if you want it to be lasting, work backwards from it. What's the feeling you're trying to convey?
I love that. I love that. I actually, man, I think that's just a great spot to end. Like, I think that's it. Like, that is, I love it, because I'm a planner and I like to work I start with the end in mind. And
Yeah.
I love that about that. I can take something away from that, even doing these interviews. So I think it's amazing. So Janette, I want to thank you for your time. There's so many things I took away that I'm going to reach out to you and pick your brain on in the future, but I want to thank you for your time today and sharing and just imparting your wisdom on women in this industry and doing all that you do to lift them up. And if there's anyone that wants to hear more about what you coach on or connect with you or just be in your orbit, what's the best way for them to get in touch with you?
Either send me a message on LinkedIn or just email me direct, which is janette.marx@airswift.com.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being here and enjoy the rest of your day.
All right. Thank you so much.